Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Zittrain, and I am so pleased to be talking with Brad Smith of Microsoft today. I should open with a warning that by now, and given our topic, should be rote. You are being watched at all times. Anything you say can and will be used against you, but we welcome your participation.
A way to restate the question that you're getting at is, for example, when should the United States government be able to reach into another country, into a data center built in another country to get the data inside? And analogize back to sort of state laws, tort laws, minimum contacts, etc. One could understand a rule that would say that if you have an American citizen or resident that is storing data in another place, what one could imagine a public policy rationale that would enable the U.S. government to serve a warrant and get that approved by a magistrate in the United States and reach that. That stands in sharp contrast to the current position that the Department of Justice is taking in our lawsuit. They're basically saying, look, if the data center was built or is operated by an American company, they can reach anything inside. And I just think that really goes to the heart of sovereignty. It basically means that whenever an American company builds a building in another country, that suddenly that building is subject to the sovereign reach of the United States government. And the UK government has followed this path. The Parliament amended its law in July to say that whenever a company that does business in the United Kingdom has data in another country, the British government can issue a warrant.
Yes.
And these things look one way. I find when I'm talking to people in London or Washington, D.C., and they're saying, of course we want to reach other places, and trust us, we'll only do it when we really need it. But Alibaba's going to build a data center in the United States, isn't it? Everybody knows a year from now, if somebody wants to buy eBay, it might be possible to buy it. If somebody wants to buy PayPal, it might be possible to buy it. There are technology companies around the world. How will people in Washington, D.C. feel if the Chinese government, the Russian government, the Iranian government, the North Korean government, or pick the government of your choice, decides simply to follow the principle that has been advocated by the U.S. government? Suddenly the rights of Americans are no longer being protected by their own law. They're subject to a whole bunch of other laws.
You can imagine the first thing, if that were to come about, Congress would probably happily do, right? They'd break the gridlock for 10 minutes to do that, which would be to say, oh, by the way, if the Chinese government comes knocking, you are not permitted to give data that is under U.S. jurisdiction over to the Chinese. Does that then put the company into a bind where you have two sovereigns with opposite requirements and you don't know what to do?
I do think that this is where one creates a real risk of fostering chaos on the internet.
Is the fear that two sovereign states might take claim to a tech company's data really something that might foster chaos on the internet? Or was what we just witnessed nothing more than a press release from Microsoft being run under the guise of a casual discussion between the head of corporate and legal affairs for Microsoft and his buddy, the co-founder of Harvard Law's Berkman Center for Internet and Society, which is primarily a policy advisory board and think tank. But you might have spotted the constant scripted agreement throughout the discussion by Jonathan Zittrain, as well as the way he tended to guide the discussion to make it look like the head of corporate and legal affairs for Microsoft was nothing short of a genius for promoting his new policies for trade agreements. But what exactly is the policy that they're trying to sell us here? Well, let's look to the description of the event on Berkman Center's very own website.
Brad Smith, Microsoft's General Counsel and Executive Vice President of Legal and Corporate Affairs, and Jonathan Zittrain, Professor of Law at Harvard Law School, and co-founder of the Berkman Center for Internet and Society, explore the role of law in protecting our rights in the physical world online, the complementary roles of law and technology in achieving this protection, and the need for governments to come together so that companies and customers do not face conflicting legal obligations.
and the need for governments to come together so that companies and customers do not face conflicting legal obligations.
So that's the agenda. This PR event is meant to trick us into advocating that we need to create a global trade agreement to keep tech companies safe from worrying about legal obligations to multiple sovereign states. Their justification being that if other countries use the same claims to data that the US did, US consumers and enterprises could be at risk. See, what's happening here is they're hyping a crisis that only exists in their heads. It's not a real problem, but their intention is to scare us into thinking that we need to act preemptively. But this wasn't the first time that Microsoft got busted using a think tank as a PR firm to push a fabricated crisis. In April, a Slashdot submitter finally put all the pieces of the puzzle together and found a video from March 2013.
So Brad, you're the one who mentioned this topic of making the problem bigger, so we galvanize action by really producing a crisis, I take it.
Yeah, I think we have the opportunity to do two things. I mean, one is I do think we need to shine a light on the rapid growth of unfilled jobs.
To glean some more insight, let's look at this Slashdot article itself. New York Times' Eric Lipton was just awarded a 2015 Pulitzer Prize for investigative reporting that shed light on how foreign powers buy influence at think tanks. So it probably bears mentioning that Microsoft's two-pronged national talent strategy to increase K-12 computer science education and the number of H-1B visas, which is on the verge of being codified into laws, was hatched at an influential Microsoft and Gates Foundation-backed think tank mentioned in Lipton's reporting,
The Brookings Institution.
In 2012, the Center for Technology Innovation at Brookings hosted a forum on STEM education and immigration reforms, where fabricating a crisis was discussed as a strategy to succeed with Microsoft's agenda after earlier lobbying attempts by Bill Gates and Microsoft had failed.
So Brad, who is Microsoft General Counsel Brad Smith, asked the Brookings Institution's Daryl West at an event, "So you're the only one who mentioned the topic of making the problem bigger. So we galvanize action by really producing a crisis, I take it?" Smith replied, of course, yeah.
And with the help of non-profit organizations like Code.org and FWD.US that were founded shortly thereafter, a national K-12 computer science and tech immigration crisis was indeed created. But when you look at the official blog for Microsoft Research, you see a post by one J. Nathan Mateus. It reads,
"This spring, I've been reading extensively about digital labor and citizenship online, including the story of over 30,000 AOL community leaders who facilitated online communities in the 90s. With Reddit pushing for profitability and promising new policies on online harassment, I thought that potential tensions arising this summer might offer an important lens into the work of moderators at a time when listening to mods and recognizing their work would be especially important."
and then it continues.
The summer is likely to include substantial discussion and introspection on the nature and the boundaries of moderation work on Reddit, end quote. I wrote in my proposal midday. Although I expected something, I didn't expect that Reddit would ban a set of subreddits and mods in their attempt to carry out their policies, or that some Redditors would vigorously oppose this move. Also, as an update, I also did not anticipate that Reddit moderators would take their subs private to advocate for changes in how they are treated. These controversies have convinced me that this research could be especially valuable right now. Press coverage is likely to focus primarily on the controversy, while I can carry out a summer-long project in a conversation with a wider sample of Redditors than just those associated with the controversy. I'm a PhD student at the MIT Media Lab Center for Civic Media and a fellow at Harvard's Berkman Center for Internet and Society, where I research civic life online. As a PhD intern at Microsoft Research, I get to be supported this summer by amazing researchers, including Tyler.
So he's researching as they roll out site-wide censorship on Reddit.
Brad Smith, Microsoft's General Counsel and Executive Vice President of Legal and Corporate Affairs, and Jonathan Zittrain, Professor of Law at Harvard Law School, and co-founder of the Berkman Center for Internet and Society, explore the role of law in protecting our rights in the physical world online, the complementary roles of law and technology in achieving this protection, and the need for governments to come together so that companies and customers do not face conflicting legal obligations.
And the need for governments to come together so that companies and customers do not face conflicting legal obligations.